Kia ora. In this video we're going to look at how to add a release to MusicBrainz. So a release can be an album, an EP, a single, digital or physical, and so forth. And there's a few different ways to do this, but let's just go through the manual way now, the kind of the most straightforward way with the CD that I've got in hand. So I've got the CD in my hand, it's a single, and it's not in this artist yet. We've already added the artist, there's no release. Now there's a few different ways we can go into the add release page, and that's we've got here on the right, we've got add release. Ignore add release group for now, or at the top here we've got editing, add release, and add various artists release. Now this is an interesting one. These two are pretty much the same, but it's just to help out new users. So if we click on add various artists release, the only difference to add release is that it's pre-entered various artists here. So add release, let's try that other button. Here we go. So it hasn't pre-filled that. Now I'm entering all this data off my off the CD I've got in hand. I'm just going to type in the title. Now this should be pretty straightforward again, and this isn't in the database yet, so you'll see it's also auto-filled the release group. Now the release group groups CDs that are the same release, so the same album but different versions. So it might be a different format, it might be the vinyl and the CD, two different formats. We still want them in the same release group. It might be a reissue, might be the same CD but with a different barcode for a different area, and so forth. So we can check here for existing release groups. So none of these are the same release that I'm working on, so we're not going to select them. We're just going to leave this. It's going to auto create the release group in this case. So now here I'm going to search for the artist. This is the artist field, so I'm going to type in the art of cheese. Here we go, and this is correct. If we don't find the correct artist here, don't pick the closest one, the closest sounding one. We're going to click on add a new artist down here, and you can find another video on how to do that on YouTube as well. But here we've already added it, so we're going to go to the art of cheese. This is the correct artist. Now there's not actually much that we need to add to get this release in. So we've got these two fields with bold here, title and artist. We can actually already move on, which you probably won't want to do. We want to add as much information as possible that we're sure of. But for this example, just for now, we're going to move on to Tracklist up here. Use this next at the bottom or the button at the top. Now here we've got add medium is going to pop up. So this is the track parser. What we can do here is we can find existing mediums. We can search the database to see if this already exists. And if we selected these, we could then use those as a template. But we're going to do manual entry because, again, the CD isn't in there. These are new tracks. So I'm just going to go best pants. And I've got the times here as well. My science project 217. And then we've got all these options down here. So this track parser is kind of a clever way to do it. Lines don't start with a track number. They don't have track artists. It's title and length. So I can click add medium down here. Here we go. So it's added it in automatically. If you don't want to use the track parser, we can also do this. We can go, where is it? Here we go. Add one track. We'll add two tracks. And we can fill this in manually as well. So let's do it this way as well. We've got best pants, which is 301. Length is optional, but we're going to enter it. Title is not optional. My science project. Now here we are going to use another button. Oh, let me enter the time for this. I'm going to use another button, which is guess case. It's down here as well at the bottom. So we're going to use guest case. It's just going to put everything into title case. Unless we know that the artist used all lowercase or all uppercase on purpose, not just for graphical, not just to make it look cool. We pretty much always hit guest case. Keep this tidy. And now I do know the format as well. So here we go. We've got the list. So in this case, I know it's CDR, a writable CD, because I've got it in hand. So click I don't know if you don't know. That's quite unlikely. Now the recordings tab, this is where we can see if this recording already exists. So similar to the release group, we want to group things logically. So if this is a popular recording called Best Pants, it might be on lots of different CDs, but it's just the same recording of that same song everywhere. So we can see that here actually. So we've searched for Best Pants. We haven't found this result. We have found Hot Pants by James Brown, which appears on a number. We've got it on 2 compilations here. That just helps us find our songs and group everything together. So if it's a compilation and you know what it links to, but again, if you're not sure, if you're not feeling confident, just ignore it. We've really got what we need. We've got the track list, we've got the name and title. We're going to click on Edit Note at the top, and here we're going to see what we've added. So we're going to add the release group that's going to be automatically added based on the release title. We've got the artist, the name, and then we've got the medium with these 2. Now we have to add an edit note. So ideally this is a URL, a link to a website where other people can double check the information. But in this case, I've only got it in hand. So I'm going to go from CD in hand. Not ideal, but honestly it's still true, and editors know they can ask me for more information if they need it. And I will of course be adding scans and all kinds of details that prove this release exists. Now that was the quick version. It's really not ideal. So I'm gonna go back and make sure that I've added actually everything that I need. If you're in a massive hurry or you just don't know anymore, this will do. So let's go back to release information and look at the other options that we've got here, because we really want to fill out as much as possible. So for primary type here, for album, single, EP, broadcast, and other. These should be pretty self-explanatory. In this case, it's a single. Longer full lengths. You've got album, EP, broadcast like radio shows and so on, and other for things that don't fit into here. For instance, an audiobook, you wouldn't call an album. If it hasn't been on the radio, it's also not a broadcast. You might go other. In this case, I know it's a single. And now secondary type. So this is where we can start adding extra information like live, remix, soundtrack, and that goes together with the primary type. So we might have other and audiobook if this was an audiobook. But in this case, just a single, it's not live, we don't add any secondary types. Okay, next is status. So here we've got official, promotion, bootleg, pseudo-release, withdrawn, and cancelled. Now you probably won't be using most of these, but it is important to note that promotion is a little bit different in MusicBrainz than you might usually think. A single can be promotional in nature, or it can be on the front of a magazine, for instance. But what we really mean is releases that weren't available to the public. So it's just been sent to the radio. It's not for resale. A CD included with a magazine is still official because it was widely spread and anyone can buy it. So usually you're looking at official or bootleg. Now bootlegs, again, should be pretty straightforward. Unofficial releases that are, put onto CDs and then sold. For instance, a Russian copy of a CD that's been put out by a bootleg label, or a website blog. Now, this doesn't mean that we allow any bootleg. It's got to be widespread and notable enough. So the writable CD that you've made for your friend down the road, you've made them a playlist, don't put it into MusicBrainz. This is for bootlegs that were publicly available and widely distributed. In this case, the artist put this out, so we know it's official. Pseudo release is for, it's getting a little bit technical here. It's for releases that are where the track list is in a different language, and it's for translated track lists. So you don't really want to use that unless you're a little bit familiar. Withdrawn, the artist has later disowned the release and withdrawn it from circulation. This doesn't mean sold out. It also doesn't mean no longer on Spotify because the artist wants to draw attention to new releases. It really has to be withdrawn in a way that isn't just reaching the end of its natural lifespan, if that makes sense. Now, cancel means we know this album was announced and then for one reason or another it was cancelled. We don't use that very often, but sometimes it's useful. In this case, again, we've got official here. Now for language, language is actually, it's the language of the track list that we're doing here. So we can check up the top. I've already entered it, so we can see this is all English and in Latin script. So we'll go back to release information. So language, we will put in English. We've got our frequently used languages at the top here, and then a very comprehensive list of other languages. In this case, we've got English under frequently used. Multiple languages, of course, if the track list has, usually if there's just one track, let's say one track and 10 is a different language, I wouldn't use multiple languages. I'd consider that an outlier. But if it's really a mix of languages, multiple languages, again in this case just English. And the script, a lot of people leave this blank because they don't know what script is. It's fair enough. Neither did I before using MusicBrainz. But in this case, this writing here is Latin. If I can read it in an English speaker or most of Europe, it's Latin. It's really Chinese, Japanese, older languages, Greek. Now, in this case, again, I'm going to say if you don't know what script means and you only familiar with these types of letters that we can see on the screen right here, just pick Latin. This is definitely all Latin. German's Latin. It's not about understanding the words, but using A, B, C, D, E, and so forth. Latin. Now, release event. So on the CD, we'll move on to this section. So this is when this version of the CD was released. Release event all relates to the version you've got in hand. So even if it's a reissue, you're not gonna use the vinyl original release date. You're gonna use the date of the version that you're entering. So in this case, the CD is from 2004, and I don't know the month and day, and you often won't. Digital releases, much better in that case, you might know that. And I do know the country it was released in, which is New Zealand. Now again, with digital releases, you'll often be using worldwide. Now that is if it's a website that isn't region restricted. So Bandcamp usually, for instance, has no region restrictions. It's available everywhere. Sometimes you might not be sure. Again, if you're not sure, leave it blank. That's fine. This CD, however, I know is a New Zealand artist. They release it themselves. I'm going to put New Zealand as the release country. Now, if the artist is from New Zealand, but it was released by a French label, I would put country France. Country does not mean where the artist is from necessarily. Often it's the same, but not necessarily. In this case, we've got a New Zealand artist, release it themselves in New Zealand. Yes, you can order it overseas, you can order it from France, but the country is really the event of the release. So usually the label. So let's say we had a New Zealand label, so we had Flying Nun. I'll search for Flying Nun. Flying Nun Records, and then we'd enter the catalog number. Catalog number is usually found on the spine of the release, or for digital it might be on the label website or on the Bandcamp page. Again, if you don't know, leave it blank. Let's say this was on the label 101. Now in this case there's no label, so I'm gonna we've got a label for that. Funny enough, it's called no label in brackets. Brackets in MusicBrainz means we've kind of made up something to fill this field. So we've got no label here. And for cat number, again, you can leave it blank, but because I know that there is no catalog number on here, and just to make it clear that it's not that the information's missing or I don't know it, but the release itself actually has nothing on it, I'm going to put in none, also in brackets. Again, not necessarily, you can leave it blank if you'd like. Once again, we've got dealing with pretty simple release here, so we don't have a barcode. So I can tick this release does not have a barcode. Otherwise, you can of course type your barcode in the top here in this field, and it's just going to check whether it's valid or not. So this is obviously not a legitimate barcode, so I'd have to double check it. Of course, if this is under the barcode, I can tick here, I confirm this is as it is on the release. But most likely you've done a typo, to be honest, if this pops up. But in this case, no barcode. So we can tick that. Now packaging. We've got a lot of different packaging types. You want to look at the documentation on packaging types for more if you're not sure what you've got, because there's quite a lot here. Suffice to say, for digital, there's almost always none. It'd be very rare to have digital with packaging. So, you know, I mean, maybe if it's a special version, it's a download code that came in a cassette case, something like that, you might pick cassette case. Usually for digital, it would be none. In this case, I've just got a standard CD holder, those plastic ones, which I know is a jewel case. Again, if you don't know, you can always leave it blank. I know this is a jewel case. Now, additional information. Now, you can write in whatever you like here, extra information. What the information that I know is who it's written and composed by, and where it was recorded. Now I'm going to add that to relationships. So I'm going to add that in properly in air quotes. But if you want to, you can put it in the annotation, and then so here we've got just a free text field or information. It's not for the press release. It's not for the artist biography. This is really for information related to this specific release, this CD that I've got in hand. And disambiguation. This would be if there's another release in the database called Best Pants, or particularly within the same release group. So this is a CD that is identical to another one in the database, but it's got a different color cover, for instance. I will put here blue cover. I'll keep this very short. It's just to tell releases apart, short and lowercase, unless it's a title or a place name, and so forth. But in this case, again, it's the only release in this release group, and it hasn't been added before, so we can leave that blank. So all we've got left now is external links. Now this is pretty useful in most cases. This could be to another database. It's got to be, again, specifically about this release. If you have a link to an artist's official homepage, put that on the artist page. It doesn't belong here. But let's say, in this case, I don't have any links. Again, just a CD in hand. But let's say I did have a Bandcamp link. I'm going to add it right here. I'm going to paste it in, a Bandcamp link. And then here for a digital release, it might be download for free and so forth. Because I'm entering a CD, it's quite likely that the only kind of link you'd do is a purchase for mail order. If I'm adding the digital version that you can stream, or add another digital media release to the release group. In this case, got purchase for mail order. It could also be other databases. Let me just grab a link. So I am searching Discogs right now. Let's have Okay, so we've got Hot Pants by James Brown again. So I've just copied out the Discogs URL. I'm going to add it in here. It's automatically set the type to Discogs. So again, this is extremely useful, adding external links. Unfortunately, once again, I only have the CD in hand. So we are going to go next. That's all been entered. Okay. And this is all looking correct. We already added this before, and we already covered recordings. So yeah, that's it. Look, as we can see, edit note here has been updated with all this extra information that we added. Official English Latin jewel case, no barcode, and the label, and so forth. We've got our edit note from CD in hand, and we can go enter edit. Let's just wait a second while it adds this release to the database, and then we'll be good to go. Great, now look at that, it's in. So I wouldn't call this 100% complete. I'm still going to add a disc ID, some cover art, but for our purposes, this is done. You can check other videos for how to add the rest of the information. And if we click on the artist up here, as we can see, we've got a single 2004 Best Pants.